New Raid Shadow Legends champions. Time to place them on the tier list. Damage based on attack. Attacks one enemy 3 times. When fully leveled up, each hit will have a 75% chance of placing a 25% weakened debuff for 2 turns. Excellent default skill. Attacks all enemies. Before attacking, removes all buffs from all enemies, and when fully leveled up will have a 100% chance of placing a block buffs debuff and a 60% decreased defense debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Fully leveled up, cooldown will be 3 turns. That's amazing. Oh. Fully leveled up, cooldown will be 4 turns. But wait, revives all dead allies with 50% HP and 50% turn meter. If all other allies are dead, revives them with 75% HP and 70% turn meter. Instead, and decreases the cooldown of all revived ally skills by 1 turn. Also increases the cooldown of all enemy skills by 2 turns. Frick. Oh. Default accuracy is 20. The average default resistance is 30. Increases ally accuracy in all battles by 60. Okay, so that overpowers the default resistance of the average default resistance of champions in this game. Fills the champion's turn meter by 20% whenever an ally dies. Heals his champion by 20% of their max HP whenever they are attacked by an enemy under a Pain Link debuff. Occurs once per turn. Places a Pain Link debuff for 2 turns on enemies who deal damage equal to 25% or more of an ally's max HP with a single skill. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate. Take away this passive skill, and this will be an S tier champion. But with this passive skill, they're relying on their ally. This champion is relying on their allies to have low defense in order for this passive skill to be activated. Like, in order to guarantee that this passive skill is activated and the Pain Link debuff is placed, their allies would have to have low defense. S tier support champion, but full potential requires this champion to be fighting with allies. However, this champion is still extremely overpowered even without any allies. So actually, yeah, S tier. Now, who was the other one? Undead Hordes. Void affinity, so no affinity disadvantages. 2 passive skills. Increases ally defense in all battles by 33%. Attacks all enemies with the default skill that attacks all enemies. That is unbelievably overpowered. Because that means that this champion is under a provoke, block active skills, or is under a provoke or block active skills debuff, then they can still attack all enemies. And since the default skill attacks all enemies, if an enemy is under a taunt buff, that taunt buff will have no effect against this champion. Attacks all enemies. Okay, so a default skill attacks all enemies. When fully leveled up, will have a 75% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff and a 25% weakened debuff for 1 turn. Okay, yeah, debuffs placed for 1 turn. Okay, never mind. Forget the debuffs. Because this champion's default accuracy is 10. Attacks all enemies. When fully leveled up, will have a 100% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Places a 60% increased defense debuff and a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield is proportional to this champion's defense. Oh yeah, damage based on defense. This champion only deals damage based on defense. So why does this champion have any attack? That attack is pointless. It's literally going to do nothing. Default resistance and critical rate are average. Default critical damage is 63%. Defense is 1,597. Speed is 104. That's good. Attacks 1 enemy. Will ignore life barrier, poison cloud, shield, and block damage buffs, as well as 25% of the target's defense. If the target is killed by this skill, revives a random dead ally with 50% HP and 50% turn meter. This revive will ignore block revive debuffs? Places a block revive debuff on targets killed by the skill. Now, block revive debuffs cannot be resisted, so that low accuracy doesn't matter. Fully leveled up, cooldown will be 3 turns. And this skill also fully leveled up, cooldown will be 3 turns. Whenever this champion kills an enemy or decapitates a Hydra head, fills the turn meters of all allies by 25% and heals them by 25% of their max HP. Oh my gosh. Whenever an enemy is revived, instantly activates the You Stand Accused skill against that enemy. If multiple enemies are revived, whenever an enemy is revived, if multiple enemies are revived, the initial target of the revive will be targeted by the You Stand Accused skill. Will not put that skill on cooldown. There's a 50% chance on activating the You Stand Accused skill on an enemy whenever an ally is killed. Occurs once per turn. Instantly activates the You Stand Accused skill against the Hydra head whenever an ally is consumed by that head. Will not put that skill on cooldown. And these passive skills have no cooldowns. It is extremely rare for a defense type champion to be B tier or higher. This is a god tier legendary defense void champion. And yes, theoretically, any champion can be S tier. I'm just going off of their default stats and their fully leveled up skills. With no artifacts or accessories or masteries. Yeah. And Nekharet, the Great, is an S tier champion if he's fighting with allies. When he's fighting alone in the campaign, he's D tier. I know from experience because I've had him on a previous account. Ultimate Death Knight is definitely S tier. And the Calamitous is the most overpowered champion in all of Raid Shadow Legends. Because when this mythical champion changes to his alternate form, his stats do not change. And right here, when he attacks all enemies, cooldown 3 turns. His default accuracy is 20. But fully level up, ignore resist by 20%. Attacks all enemies, places a hex, and 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns before attacking. Has an extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Will ignore life barrier, poison cloud, and ally protection buffs. Cooldown 3 turns. Final Testament, fully leveled up, cooldown will be 3 turns. Attacks all enemies. Has an extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Removes all debuffs from this champion before attacking. Will ignore 20% of each enemy's defense. Will ignore 35% of each target's defense instead if they are under a hex debuff. Damage increases by 10% for each debuff on the target. Attacks one enemy, has an extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit. After attacking, transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target. Fully level up, ignore resistance by 20%. If the target is under a hex debuff before the attack, transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target before attacking instead. Whenever this champion attacks an enemy under a hex debuff, heals this champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. Also increases this champion's attack by 20% for each enemy under a hex debuff. And that's not even all. In his default form, his default skill, each hit has an extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit restores this champion's destroyed max HP equal to the damage inflicted. Each hit also heals this champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. That's 2 entire artifact sets. 3 actually. Critical rate, lifesteal, and curing. all in this champion's default skill. Also, the default skill grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy, and it attacks more than once. This one attacks one enemy 4 times. Each hit has an extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit. First hit will ignore 10% of the target's defense and place a block buffs debuff. All the other hits will ignore an additional 5% of the target's defense. Second hit places a 60% decreased defense debuff. Third hit places a 25% weaken debuff. Fourth hit places a 30% decreased speed debuff, all for 2 turns. Damage based on attack. Attack and defense, both over 1000. Speed, 105. At the start of this champion's turn, places a shield buff equal to 50% of this champion's max HP on them for 1 turn. Not at the start of the round, at the start of their turn. Also places a 50% increased attack buff on this champion for 1 turn. So that adds to the default skill. A 4th artifact set 2 times. Attack. Because each attack artifact set increases attack by 15%. So actually, 3 times. Also, if that wasn't enough, Aura increases ally attack in all battles by 35%. And that's not even all. Attacks all enemies. Fully leveled up cooldown will be 4 turns. Oh yeah, this one cooldown 3 turns, but fully leveled up cooldown will be 4 turns. But attacks all enemies, and this attack is always critical and will ignore 20% of each enemy's defense. If this attack kills one enemy, places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn. If this attack kills 2 or more enemies, places an unkillable buff on this champion for 2 turns. That fully leveled up 4 turn cooldown doesn't make this champion any less overpowered given the rest of his skills. The Calamitous is the most overpowered champion in all of Raid Shadow Legends ever. The second most overpowered champion is Theodosia the Disgraced. Attacks one enemy, heals all allies by 5% of this champion's max HP, fills the champion's turn meter by 5% for each alive ally, and an additional 2.5% for each alive enemy, although damage based on HP. Yeah, this champion only deals damage based on HP, so I don't know why they have any attack. But speed 115. And yeah. All of this. Destroys the target's speed by 3. Stacks up to 30. Decreases the target's turn meter by 5% for each ally and by an additional 2.5% for each alive enemy. Ignore resistance plus 20% when fully leveled up. Revives all dead allies. Places with 50% HP and 50% turn meter. Fully leveled up cooldown will be 4 turns. Places an unkillable buff on all allies for 2 turns. Removes all debuffs from all allies. Places a perfect veil buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Places a stone skin buff on this champion for 1 turn. Fully level up cooldown will be 3 turns. Yeah. Decreases the target's speed up to 30. By up to 30. This is the second most overpowered champion in all of Raid Shadow Legends. Oh yeah, that's not even all. This champion is immune to block active skills debuffs. Yeah.